Mara stood at the airlock of the drifting starship and took a slow breath. The metal door hissed open, and cold blue light spilled into the corridor. He had seen derelict ships before, but none so silent, so empty of life. His heart pounded in his chest as he stepped inside. The hall was vast. Tall columns lined the walls, carved with strange symbols that seemed to shift when Mara looked away. The floor glowed faintly under his boots, guiding him deeper into the ship's heart. He felt both awe and danger. Every shadow whispered warnings he could almost hear. At the far end of the hall, a figure knelt on a raised dais beneath a shattered dome. She wore a long gown of dark cloth that gleamed like wet stone. Her skin was pale, almost white, and her hair fell around her shoulders like a silver waterfall. Mara's breath caught when he saw her eyes. They were red, like twin coals glowing in the dark. He raised his hand in greeting. "I am Captain Mara of the Human Explorer Guild," he called. His voice echoed off the walls. "I come in peace." The princess lifted her head, and the red in her eyes softened into a sad glow. She bowed her head lower, deeper than any formal salute. Then she spoke in a voice as soft as silk. "Forgive me, human." Mara froze. She spoke his language perfectly, without hesitation. He took another step forward, careful not to make any sudden moves. "Who are you?" he asked. She rose to her full height. Even standing, she seemed fragile, as if a strong wind could, at any moment, blow her away. "I am Lyra," she said. Her voice trembled. "I am the vampire princess of this lost world." Vampire. The word tasted like fire on Mara's tongue. He had heard legends, tales of alien beings who needed the life force of others to survive. Yet this princess did not look cruel. Instead, she looked haunted, as if guilt weighed on her very bones. Mara kept his hand where she could see it. "Why do you ask my forgiveness?" he said, trying to keep his voice calm. Lyra's gaze dropped to the floor. "Because in saving myself, I took from those who could not give back. Because I broke ancient laws and allowed innocents to suffer. Because I owe more than I can repay." Her words rolled over Mara like a tide. He felt pity for her, but also wariness. Was she dangerous? Could he trust her apology? The soft hum of the ship's engines and the dripping of water from broken pipes filled the silence between them. He shaded his eyes against the glow of the floor and studied her face. She looked so sorry, so small in the empty hall. A single tear rolled down her cheek, sparkling in the pale light. Mara nodded once. "Tell me your story," he said. "I will listen." Lyra lifted her head, and her eyes shone with relief. She stepped down from the dais and moved to stand before him. The legends were real, but the princess was not what he expected. She was a stranger in need, and he was the only one who could help her find forgiveness. As her long fingers wiped away that lone tear, a bond formed in the silent hall, one that would lead them both into danger and hope. Lyra paused in the ship's main corridor. Her pale fingers hovered over the silver railing. She looked down at the glowing floor, collecting her courage. Mara stood a few steps behind her, his boots making soft thuds in the hush of the hall. "I will tell you why I asked forgiveness," Lyra said, her voice low and steady. "But first, I must warn you. My story is dark." Mara kept his eyes on her. He did not step closer or back away. He nodded. "I will listen," he said simply. Lyra took a breath. Memories flared behind her red eyes. "My people once ruled many worlds," she began. "We were proud and strong, but we also hungered for power. To feed that hunger, we made a terrible choice." She glanced at Mara as if fearing his reaction, but he only watched. "We bound ourselves to an ancient energy," Lyra continued. "It gave us long life and great strength. In return, we had to drain the life force of others. We became vampires of legend." Mara frowned but stayed silent. Lyra's shoulders shook. "I thought I could control it. I thought I could take only what was needed, but that was a lie." She stopped, her gaze fixed on a dark knot in the wall. On a distant moon, our ship was attacked by pirates. They wanted our technology. They did not know what we were. They did not care. Lyra's hands clenched at her sides. I fought them with everything I had. Their weapons could not harm me. My thirst drove me on. Yet I saw their fear. I knew they were not monsters. They were desperate, like all living things. A single tear glimmered on her cheek. In a moment of blind rage, I fed on the weakest prisoner. He begged for mercy. But I could not stop. When it was over, I felt no triumph, only shame. Murrah felt cold in his chest. He took a careful step forward. And then he asked. Lyra bent her head. Then I saw the others, my people. They cheered me. They praised my strength, but I felt sick. I could not join them. I walked away from my throne. I fled into the desert alone. Her gown brushed the metal floor as she moved. I wandered there, weak and alone. I hunted creatures to survive, but every time I drank, I remembered that prisoner's face. I carried his fear in my mind. Mara's heart ached at her words. He felt a mix of pity and respect. Lyra lifted her eyes. When I learned your ship drifted here, I came to face my guilt. I saw your cruise ships down below. I did not know what I would find. I thought I might end my life that day. She paused again, breathing hard. But when I saw you, human, I felt something new. I felt hope. Murrah's jaw loosened. He stepped closer. Your story is hard, he said softly. But your words ring true. You did what you could to save someone. Then you fled. That shows courage. Lyra's lips curved in a small, grateful smile. Thank you, she whispered. I feared you would hate me. Murrah shook his head. I do not hate you, he said. I want to help you find a new path. Lyra's red eyes brightened. In that silent corridor, two strangers formed the first bond of trust. One born from sorrow, one forged by compassion. Lyra and Murrah moved slowly down the ship's long corridor. The metal walls were broken and scarred. Water dripped from a cracked pipe overhead. Lyra kept her pale hand on the railing. Her red eyes were fixed ahead. Murrah watched her with concern. He stepped to her side. This way, he said, pointing at a door marked with strange symbols. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a small archive room. The room was filled with floating data panels. Each panel glowed with blue light. Murrah tapped one panel, and lines of text and images flowed before them. Lyra drew closer, her breath catching in her throat. She placed her hand on a console in the center. The screen blinked, then showed scenes of her ship under attack. Explosions rocked the decks. Pirates fired strange weapons. Lyra gasped as she saw herself in the flames, her dark gown torn and stained. Her hand shook. She turned her face away and pressed it into Murrah's shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her thin frame. You do not have to watch this, he whispered. His voice was calm and steady. Lyra closed her eyes and let out a quiet sob. Tears fell onto Murrah's uniform. He held her gently until she stilled. After a moment, she lifted her head and looked back at the screen. I must know, she said softly. I need to see why they came. Murrah wiped her cheek where her tears had landed, then tapped the panel. The view changed to text logs and star maps. Lines of code scrolled by. Lyra read the logs and gasped again when she found a name. Cousin Arvik. Her breath hitched. Arvik was her own blood, her closest kin. She had trusted him above all. The logs showed Arvik led the pirate raid. He had sold his own people to a crime lord in exchange for power. Lyra's knees nearly gave out. Murrah caught her just in time. He steadied her under her arms. You are safe now, he said. You are not alone. Lyra nodded, though her lips trembled. She pressed her forehead to Murrah's chest. He felt her heart beat fast but steady. In that moment, she tasted comfort instead of fear. They studied the star map. Coordinates marked a hidden base on a rocky moon. Arvik's ship lay there, ready to strike other worlds. Mara pointed to the blinking light. "We can stop him," he said. "We'll go together." Lyra lifted her head and looked into his eyes. A small spark of hope glowed there. She whispered, "Thank you." Suddenly, an alarm rang out. Red lights flashed in the archive. An automated defense drone hurtled down the corridor, its single eye glowing. Mara pulled Lyra back behind a stack of metal crates. The drone fired a beam that cut into the floor beside them. Sparks flew. Lyra's lips parted in shock. Mara raised his pulse blaster and fired. The beam hit the drone's leg, and it stumbled forward. Lyra stepped out from behind the crates. Her pale hand flashed as she grabbed the drone's arm and bent it backward. The metal groaned, then crumpled. The drone shut down in a shower of sparks. Lyra let go and stepped back, breathing hard. Mara lowered his weapon and hurried to her side. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Lyra shook her head, though her gown was singed and her arm shook. She smiled at Mara, a real bright smile. "No," she said. "Thank you for standing by me." Mara nodded and offered his hand. Lyra took it without hesitation. Together, they left the archive, bound by a new trust and a shared purpose: to find Arvik, to end his plot, and to bring true justice across the stars. Mara guided the small scout shuttle out of the archive bay and onto the empty hangar deck. The shuttle's engines glowed with blue energy as it warmed up. Lyra sat beside him, her gown folded neatly on the seat. She straightened her spine and nodded. "I am ready," she said. Mara checked the navigation panel. "Hold on," he replied, and the shuttle lifted off with a soft roar. Through the viewport, the stars stretched into lines as the shuttle jumped into faster-than-light travel. Lyra closed her eyes as the familiar hum filled the cabin. Mara watched her with concern. He placed a gentle hand on her arm. "Almost there," he said. Moments later, the hum faded, and the shuttle dropped out of hyperspace near the rocky moon. Jagged peaks and deep craters filled their view. The shuttle glided down through thin, dusty air. Red dust swirled around them as they passed low over the barren surface. Mara aimed for a flat valley before the hidden base. Below, the base's dark towers rose like broken teeth. Walls of metal and stone surrounded the central spire. Lyra pressed her forehead to the glass, studying the layout with keen eyes. "That spire must be Arvik's command center," she whispered. The shuttle landed with a gentle thump. Dust clouded the cabin before settling again. Mara cut the engines and opened the hatch. Lyra stepped out first, her pale feet sinking slightly into the loose red soil. Mara handed her a compact energy rifle. "Here," he said softly. Lyra accepted it with a nod. Her long fingers curled around the grip, as if she held both duty and regret. They moved quietly toward the base perimeter. Mara activated a portable stealth unit, dimming their outlines. Lyra's senses sharpened. She smelled the faint scent of oil and fear on the wind. Guard towers stood at regular intervals, each with a single guard patrolling below. Lyra pointed to a gap between two towers. "We can slip through there," she said. Mara agreed and led the way, stepping carefully around broken crates and small rock formations. As they neared the wall, Lyra crouched and placed her hand against the rough metal. She closed her eyes and listened. Mara watched, impressed by her focus. "Guards are distracted," Lyra said. She pressed a hidden panel, and a small section of the wall slid open. The gap was just large enough for them to slip inside. Mara went through first, then Lyra. Inside, dim lights revealed a corridor lined with pipes and cables. Their footsteps echoed softly. Ahead, two guards walked into view, talking in low voices. Lyra raised her hand and pointed. Mara nodded. They slipped behind a stack of crates. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly as she read their patrol pattern. Together, they planned their next move, ready to draw closer to Arvik's chamber. In the silent corridor, human courage and vampire resolve moved side by side toward the heart of betrayal. 2 seconds, Mara and Lyra crept along the dim corridor. their footsteps soft on the metal grating. The air smelled of oil and heat. Pipes overhead hissed as steam escaped through small cracks. Lyra glanced at Mara. "Arvik's chamber is close," she whispered. Mara nodded. He checked the rifle's energy gauge. "We must be careful," he replied. "He will have guards." They turned a corner and saw 2 armored sentries standing before a reinforced door. The guards wore dark uniforms and carried heavy rifles. One guard scratched his helmeted head, the other yawned. Their attention was low, but only for a moment. Lyra pressed her slender fingers to her lips, signaling for silence. Mara shifted his rifle into stun mode. He aimed at the nearest guard. Lyra stepped forward and whispered an alien word. The low wave pulsed from her hand, and the guard's eyes glazed over. They lowered their rifles and slumped against the wall, unconscious but unharmed. Mara exhaled and gave Lyra a nod. She returned a small, relieved smile. Together, they moved to the door. It was thick and barred with glowing red lines of power. Lyra placed her hand on the panel. The power lines flickered. She frowned. "Security lock," she said. "Only Arvik's biomarker can open this." Mara studied the panel. "Can you hack it?" he asked. Lyra closed her eyes, concentrating. Her fingertip glowed faintly as she reached out to the lock. Sparks flickered. Then the red lines dimmed. The lock hissed and the door slid open. Beyond lay a circular room lit by a cold blue light. At its center stood Arvik, tall and proud. He wore ornate armor that gleamed like dark glass. His face was pale and sharp, like Lyra's, but his eyes were black as void. He held a staff topped with a glowing crystal. "Lyra," he said, his voice echoing. "So you brought a human to judge me." His gaze fell on Mara. "And you must be the infamous Captain Mara." Mara stepped beside Lyra, holding his rifle low. "We came for justice, Arvik," he said. "Your crimes will end today." Arvik laughed, a sound that bounced off the walls. "Justice, my dear niece, you betrayed our people, and you saved this human's life. You are as weak as he is." He lifted his staff, and the crystal pulsed with light. Lyra stepped forward, her red eyes fierce. "I broke our pact to save the innocent." Arvik's smile twisted. "Then you will die for your betrayal." He slammed his staff on the floor. The room trembled. Energy lines in the floor glowed red and snapped outward. Mara fired his rifle. The stun beam struck one line, but the energy pulsed past it. Lyra raised her hand and sent a wave of force that shattered another line. Sparks flew, and the blue light flickered. Arvik's eyes blazed. He pointed his staff at Lyra. A narrow beam shot toward her. Lyra lifted her arm, and a shield of energy formed, absorbing the blast. The beam crackled against the shield, but did not break through. Mara dashed forward and kicked the staff. It flew from Arvik's hand and clattered across the floor. Arvik growled and lunged. Lyra grabbed his arm, twisting it behind him. He hissed in pain. Mara moved to the staff and crushed it under his boot. The crystal shattered, and the room fell silent. The glowing lines faded. Arvik sank to his knees, defeated. Lyra released him and stepped back. She placed her hand on her heart. "It is over," she said quietly. Mara lowered his rifle and exhaled. "You did it," he said. He offered Lyra his hand. She took it, and together they turned toward the door, ready to leave the ruin of betrayal behind and start a new chapter of hope. Mara and Lyra exited Arvik's chamber into the cooling corridor. The air felt lighter now that the base's power core was dead. Sparks from broken lines crackled and died. Lyra paused, looking back at the closed door. "I never thought I would face him," she said softly. Mara stayed at her side. "You were brave," he replied. "You chose what was right." They moved through hallways littered with defeated guards. Some stirred, rubbing their heads where Lyra's wave had struck. Lyra knelt beside one and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. His eyes cleared, and he blinked in confusion. "Princess," he whispered. Lyra helped him stand. "You are safe," she said kindly. "Go home." The guard bowed and hurried down a side passage. Mara watched the scene. "Mercy suits you," he said. Lyra pressed her hand to her chest. "I want to change my people," she said, "not rule by fear." They found the central hangar bay and climbed into the scout shuttle. Mara powered up the engines. Lyra gazed at the rocky moon's red dust through the viewport. "I must return to my world," she said. "I need to end the old laws." Mara nodded. "I will go with you," he said. Lyra turned to him, surprise in her red eyes. "Why?" she asked. "Because we are allies now," Mara replied. "Your people and humans can stand together." Lyra smiled, faint but real. The shuttle rose, kicking up clouds of red dust. She watched the base shrink below until it was just a dark shape on the moon's surface. The stars returned as they jumped into hyperspace. Hours later, Mara's ship came into view, a large human cruiser waiting nearby. Lyra studied its hull, feeling both wonder and hope. "Your fleet is strong," she said. "They will help." Mara guided the shuttle down to a landing port. Human soldiers lined the deck, then stepped back as Lyra and Mara emerged. Commander Voss approached, saluting Lyra. "Princess Lyra," he said with respect. "Welcome aboard." Lyra returned the salute. "Thank you," she said. She looked at Mara. "I have much to do," she said. "Will you stand with me?" Mara placed a hand on her shoulder. "Always," he replied. In the cruiser's command center, Lyra and human leaders gathered around a holographic star map. Points of light marked vampire worlds under the old pact. Lyra pointed to the home planet. "We will end the pact," she said. "No more blood debt." A human diplomat nodded. "We will help draft new laws," she said. Other leaders agreed. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. For centuries, her people had feared change. Now, they saw a future of peace. She turned to Mara. "Thank you for believing in me," she said. Mara smiled. "Thank you for trusting me," he said. Later, as the cruiser jumped into hyperspace toward Lyra's homeworld, Lyra stood in the observation deck. Mara joined her. They watched stars streak past. Lyra's red eyes shone with determination. Next to her, Mara's human heart beat strong with hope. Together, they sailed toward a new dawn for two worlds once divided by fear. They arrived at Lyra's home world, a planet of silver forests and crystal lakes. The cruiser glided through open space and entered orbit above the capital city. Down below, the grand palace stood where once darkness ruled. Now its towers lit with soft blue light, signaling a new era. Lyra and Mara stepped onto the platform as crowds gathered. Vampire citizens, pale and regal, watched with hope. Many carried banners that read peace in ancient runes. Lyra inhaled the fresh air and felt its promise. A council of elders waited in the palace courtyard. Their faces were lined with age and doubt. Lyra approached them, Mara at her side. She bowed her head respectfully. "Honored elders," she said, "I return to end the old pact. No one must suffer for our power." An elder named Siren stepped forward. "Princess," he said, "you broke our laws, yet you saved countless lives. Why should we trust you now?" Lyra squared her shoulders. "Because mercy honors life. Power without compassion destroys worlds. I ask you to join me in shaping new laws. Laws of peace." Mara raised his voice so all could hear. "Humans stand with you. We value life and freedom. Together, we can build a future of hope." The crowd murmured. Vampires used to fear humans for their weakness. Now they saw strength in unity. Siren studied Lyra and Mara. His eyes softened. "Very well," he said. "We will vote on these new laws." Inside the grand hall, elders and leaders gathered around a crystal table. Lyra presented the new code: ban on forced feeding, protection for all beings, and alliance with human worlds. She spoke with clear passion. using simple words that all could understand. Mara translated when needed. Human diplomats offered guidance on rights and justice. Elders whispered among themselves, nodding as they read each clause. At last, Saren raised his hand. One by one, the others followed. The new laws passed. Outside, the palace bells rang. The crowd cheered. Lyra and Mara embraced. Tears filled Lyra's red eyes, but they were tears of joy. In the days that followed, Lyra toured villages once ruled by fear. She opened orphanages where children learned peace. She visited human outposts and shared meals with Mara's crew. Everywhere she went, she spoke of unity. Mara watched her lead with gentle strength. He felt pride in her courage. In return, Lyra taught him ancient songs of her people, their voices soft like wind through leaves. One evening, they stood by a crystal lake as twin moons rose. The water shimmered with blue light. Lyra turned to Mara. "Thank you for standing with me," she said. Mara smiled and offered his hand. "Your people showed me forgiveness. I only followed my heart." They watched the moons together, two worlds reflected in the lake. In that quiet moment, they knew their bond would shape the future, a future where humans and vampires walked side by side under the same stars. The morning sun rose over the silver forests of Lyra's world, casting gentle light on dew-covered leaves. Lyra walked along a forest path, Mara at her side. Birds with crystal plumage sang overhead. The air was fresh and alive. Lyra paused by a small clearing where new saplings grew. She knelt and touched one tenderly. "These trees were nearly gone," she said softly. "Now they will grow strong again." Mara knelt beside her and placed a hand on the tree's trunk. "Life returns when we protect it," he agreed. They continued deeper into the forest until they reached a hidden spring. The water was clear and cold. Lyra cupped her hands and drank. Mara followed her lead. As they drank, Lyra closed her eyes. "This spring once lay in darkness," she said, "but now it shines with hope." Mara smiled. "Your world heals, princess." Lyra opened her red eyes, bright with joy. "And so do I," she replied. A soft rustle behind them made Lyra turn. A group of young vampires approached, carrying baskets of fruit. They wore simple robes and wide smiles. One boy stepped forward and bowed. "Princess Lyra, these are the first fruits of the new grove. We offer them in friendship to your human friend." He held out a basket of sweet, purple fruit. Lyra took a piece and handed it to Mara. He bit into it, savored the taste, and grinned. "Delicious," he said. The children laughed and shared fruit with one another. Lyra watched them, her heart warm. Suddenly, a scout droid rolled into the clearing. Its single eye blinked. It carried a small holographic projector. The droid beeped and projected an image of a distant planet under siege. Fires burned on the surface, and dark ships hovered above. Mara frowned. "Another world needs help." Lyra's expression hardened. "We cannot ignore this," she said. She stood tall, her gown brushing the forest floor. "We will aid them, just as you aided me." Mara nodded and tapped his communicator. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "We depart at once." The scout droid stored the image and rolled away. Lyra looked at Mara. "Why do you help us so freely?" she asked. "You do not owe me anything." Mara met her gaze. "I help because it is right," he said, "and because together we are stronger." Lyra smiled and took his hand. "Then let us go," she said. They turned toward the path that led back to the cruiser's port. As they walked, the young vampires waved and called out good luck. Birds took flight, filling the sky with song. The forest glowed with new life. At the edge of the trees, the cruiser waited, its hull bright in the morning light. Mara and Lyra climbed aboard. Crew members greeted them with cheers. Lyra raised her hand in salute. "Set course for the troubled world," she commanded. "We bring hope." The engines hummed, and the cruiser lifted off. Through the viewport, the silver forests receded. Stars moved into view as they jumped into hyperspace. Lyra stood beside Mara in the command center. She placed her hand over his. "We save lives together," she said. Mara squeezed her hand. "Always," he replied. Together, the human and the vampire princess sailed across the galaxy, united by mercy and strength. Wherever darkness threatened, they would bring light, and their story would inspire hope among many worlds. Mara and Lyra stood on the bridge as the cruiser dropped out of hyperspace near the besieged planet. Flames flickered on the surface below, and smoke curled into the thin atmosphere. Dark warships hovered above, their weapons trained on the world's capital city. Mara tapped the tactical display. "Enemy fleet is small but well-armed," he said. "They hit fast and without warning." Lyra studied the viewports, her red eyes steady. "We must protect the city's shields," she said. "If they fall, the planet will burn." The bridge crews sprang into action. Human pilots readied starfighters, and engineers powered up the planet's orbital shield arrays. Lyra moved beside Mara, her gown whispering on the deck. "I'll join the fighters," she said. "My speed and strength can turn the tide." Mara shook his head. "We stay here." He pointed at the shields. "We need both of us here, directing the defense." Lyra nodded. She placed a hand on the control holo. The shield grid glowed as she recalibrated its energy flow. Her touch made the lines pulse stronger. Mara adjusted targeting frequencies for the starfighters. Together, they worked in sync, human technology and vampire power blending seamlessly. Outside, the enemy warships opened fire. Bright beams stabbed toward the planet. The shields flared and held. Lyra's eyes glowed as she guided the energy, bending it to absorb each strike. Mara called out commands. "Channel extra power to Sector 3. Divert reserves to the left flank." On the tactical display, starfighter squadrons engaged the enemy. Explosions dotted space like fireworks. A small squad led by Lyra dove through enemy fire. She moved with inhuman grace, weaving around blasts and disabling one cruiser with a single strike to its weapon banks. The enemy ship drifted, defenseless. Mara watched the feed with pride. "She's incredible," he said softly. A pilot's voice crackled over comms. "Princess Lyra just took out their lead ship. Enemy fighters are retreating." The bridge erupted in cheers. Lyra stood calmly, her face unreadable, then focused again on the shields. Mara smiled at her. "You did it," he said. Lyra glanced back. "We did it," she replied. Just then, a warning klaxon sounded. On the display, another wave of warships emerged from a nearby asteroid field. They moved faster, their weapons charging. Mara's smile faded. "They're attacking the rear," he shouted. Lyra responded quickly. She reconfigured the shield matrix, sending a pulse to the rear sector. The shields flared blue and deflected the barrage. Mara directed starfighters to intercept. "Squadron 5, engage at bearing 270. Protect our flank." Fighters raced out. Laser fire lit up space. Lyra's pulse shields held firm as Mara's tactics outmaneuvered the attackers. One by one, the warships fell or fled. Moments later, the sky cleared. The planet below was safe. Flames on the ground died down as emergency crews began relief efforts. Mara and Lyra watched in silence, the tension lifting. Lyra turned to Mara. "You saved them," she said softly. "We saved them." Mara placed a hand on her arm. "Together," he said. They looked down at the peaceful world, united by courage and mercy. In that moment, they knew their alliance had become legend, a beacon of hope that would shine across the galaxy for all time. Lyra and Mara stood on the cruiser's deck as the repaired orbital shields glowed softly around the planet below. Dawn's light crept over the horizon, painting clouds in pale pink and gold. The last of the enemy ships had fled, and the planet's people celebrated in the streets. "Today they saw us fight," Mara said, his voice quiet with pride. He looked at Lyra, whose red eyes reflected the sunrise. "They will remember our mercy and our strength." Lyra nodded. They will know that humans and vampires can stand together. She turned to the viewport and watched the world below. Tiny dots of movement marked ships bringing food, medicine, and builders to help the survivors. This is only the beginning, she said. Mara placed his hand on her shoulder. What will you do next? He asked. Lyra closed her eyes briefly, listening to the hum of the engines. I will return home, she said. I will reshape my people's future, but I will not stand alone. She smiled at Mara. Will you come with me? Mara met her gaze. He thought of the lonely corridors of her ancient ship, the dark halls where she whispered her apology, and the battles they had shared. I will, he said. Wherever you go, I will follow. Lyra's smile grew. She stepped closer and rested her head on his shoulder. Mara wrapped his arm around her. Together, they watched the sunrise over a world reborn. Later, in the cruiser's council room, Lyra and Mara addressed ambassadors from both worlds. A long table held data crystals and star charts. Lyra spoke first. Her voice was calm and clear. Today we proved that mercy is not weakness. It is our greatest strength. She paused, letting the words settle. Humans and vampires will form a new alliance. We will share knowledge, culture, and peace. A human envoy nodded. We offer you our technology and our friendship. Together, we will explore new worlds and protect those in need. An elder vampire ambassador added, we pledge to end forced feeding, to honor all life, and to build a future of harmony. Mara and Lyra exchanged happy looks. Their plan had succeeded. The alliance was real. After the meeting, Lyra led Mara to the observation deck. Stars glimmered beyond the glass. Lyra took Mara's hand. Thank you, she said softly, for your trust, your courage, and your friendship. Mara squeezed her hand. Thank you for believing in change. He smiled. And for saving my life. Lyra's laugh was soft, like wind through leaves. She leaned her head on his shoulder again. Our stories are tied now, she said. Human and vampire, side by side. The cruiser's engines hummed as it set course for Lyra's homeworld. Below, the planet grew smaller until it was a bright blue dot. Ahead lay new stars, new challenges, and new adventures. In the quiet of the deck, Lyra and Mara stood together, ready for whatever came next. Their journey had begun with an apology and a promise. Now it continued with hope and unity. And across the galaxy, that hope would shine like a beacon, guiding many through the darkness toward a better future.